On this last day of April, this is Community Radio Networks. We have all the information for you to take on this last day of April. Wishing you all a lovely Tuesday. We'll get you the world news, we'll get you the financial news, we'll get you some stories from the annals of history that happened on the last day of April. And plenty of more information right here on Community Radio Networks. Let's start with the world news. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news, read by Shabnam Matgil. Dozens of protesters took over a building at the Columbia University in New York early this morning, barricading the entrances and unfurling a Palestinian flag out a window in the latest escalation of demonstrations against the Israel-Hamas war that have spread to college campuses nationwide. Video footage showing protesters on Columbia's Manhattan campus locking arms in front of Hamilton Hall early this morning and carrying furniture and metal barricades to the building, one of several that was occupied during a 1968 civil rights and anti-Vietnam War protest on the campus. Posts on an Instagram page for protest organizers shortly after midnight urged people to protect the encampment and join them at Hamilton Hall. A Free Palestine banner hung from the window, and an autonomous group reclaimed Hind's Hall, previously known as Hamilton Hall, in honor of Hind Rajab, a martyr murdered at the hands of a genocidal Israeli state at the age of 6 years old. And the representatives for the university did not immediately respond to comments early this morning, but the Public Safety Department said in a statement that access to the Morningside campus has been limited to students living in the residential buildings and employees who provide essential services such as dining, public safety, and maintenance staff. There was just one access point into and out of the campus. Columbia University's presidents had said yesterday that talks with pro-Palestinian protesters over the dismantling of an encampment on the Ivy League campus had failed and urged them to voluntarily disperse or face suspension from school. Columbia University, the epicenter of pro-Palestinian protests that have upended college campuses across the United States, did begin suspending student demonstrators yesterday after they defied an ultimatum to disperse. Meanwhile, suspensions were also ongoing at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. And students at the University of Chicago are now joining many other movements at colleges around the country and protesting the war in the Middle East. And the usual day-to-day operations at UPenn remain business as usual, except for a large pro-Palestinian encampment in the middle of the campus, with student protesters demanding the university make changes. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is headed to Jordan, where he will discuss ways to boost aid deliveries into Gaza and quietly thank the kingdom for its help during recent Iran-Israel clashes. He flew to Amman this morning after talks with Gulf Arab leaders in Riyadh, part of his 7th tour of the region since the October 7th attack by Hamas on Israel. The U.S. diplomat will meet Jordan's King Abdullah II and Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi, as well as the UN humanitarian aid and reconstruction coordinator for Gaza. Later in the day, he'll head to Israel, where he will discuss the latest negotiations aimed at securing a temporary ceasefire and a release of hostages. He urged Hamas yesterday to accept Israel's latest proposal for a temporary ceasefire in exchange for the release of some hostages. The proposal reportedly involves a two-part plan, with Israel seeking the initial release of 33 of the roughly 130 hostages remaining in Hamas's captivity, down from an original demand of 40. And his comments came on his visit to Saudi Arabia, the first stop on his latest Middle East trip yesterday, over truce talks as a Hamas delegation met with Egyptian mediators in Cairo. The U.S. Secretary of State has met with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh also. European and Arab foreign ministers meeting at the Saudi capital yesterday to discuss how to join forces on advancing a two-state solution to the Israeli bombardment of Gaza. Hamas has been offered a 40-day ceasefire and release of potentially thousands of Palestinian prisoners in return for freeing Israeli hostages. Cautious hopes were building for a Gaza truce and hostage release deal, as Hamas said it was studying the latest proposal. And President Biden urging the leaders of Egypt and Qatar to exert all efforts towards securing the release of hostages held by Hamas as part of negotiations for that Gaza ceasefire. The UN top court will rule on charges by Nicaragua that Germany is breaching the 1948 Genocide Convention by supplying arms to Israel for the Gaza onslaught. Nicaragua has hauled Germany before the International Court of Justice to demand that judges impose emergency measures to stop Berlin from providing Israel with weapons and other assistance. Police have moved in to clear dozens of protesters who had camped out in a courtyard at the Sorbonne University in Paris to protest against the Israeli military offensive in Gaza. The Paris region authorities sparked controversy by temporarily suspending funding for Sciences Po, one of the country's most prestigious universities, after it was rocked by tense pro-Palestinian demonstrations. And China has said that rival Palestinian groups Hamas and Fatah met in Beijing recently for in-depth and candid talks on promoting intra-Palestinian reconciliation. President Biden and his national security team see a narrow window to finally seal this agreement that would at least temporarily halt the war in the Gaza Strip and possibly end it for good, even as they deflect pressure from college campus protests to abandon Israel in its fight against Hamas. The U.S. found 5 units of the Israel Defense Forces responsible for individual incidents of gross violations of human rights, according to the State Department, though whether funding to the American ally could be cut over such abuses under the so-called Leahy laws still hangs in the balance. State Department Principal Deputy Spokesman Vedant Patel told reporters that the human rights violations happened all before the October 7th attacks by Hamas militants in southern Israel, and none happened in Gaza. 4 officers were fatally shot at a U.S. Marshals task force as they were serving a warrant at a home in Charlotte, North Carolina. A suspected shooter was also dead. A marshal and 2 local officers working with the fugitive task force killed in this gunfire yesterday. And these 4 officers were killed in this shooting while attempting to serve a warrant at a home in Charlotte, North Carolina. A total of 8 were shot during the incident. At least 5 people are dead and more than 100 injured after tornadoes had swept across Oklahoma over the weekend, and the severe weather came less than 36 hours after more than 100 tornadoes leveled homes and buildings in 6 states, with Nebraska and Iowa being hit the hardest. Tornadoes in the nation's midsections are not a surprise, especially during the springtime, but so many of them all at once is alarming. Congress gave one of its highest final tributes yesterday, a lying in honor ceremony at the Capitol to Ralph Puckett Jr., who led an outnumbered company in battle during the Korean War and was the last surviving veteran of that war to receive the Medal of Honor. He retired as an Army colonel, died earlier this month at the age of 97 at his home in Columbus, Georgia, was awarded the Medal of Honor in 2021, the nation's highest military honor, 7 decades after his actions during the wartime. In lying in honor ceremony at the Capitol is reserved for the nation's most distinguished private citizens. Only 7 others have received the honor, and the latest last year was Herschel Woody Williams, who was the last surviving Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. And the ceremonies for both Williams and Puckett meant to also recognize the broader generation of veterans who are now dwindling in numbers. The Biden administration plans to require that all new cars and trucks come with pedestrian collision avoidance systems that include automatic emergency braking technology by the end of the decade. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has said the requirement is designed to reduce pedestrian deaths, which have been on the rise in the post-COVID-19 era. 5 Republican-led states have sued the Biden administration over its new rules expanding Title IX, a federal civil rights law that protects students from sex-based discrimination in federally funded schools, to protect transgender students. A handful of Republican officials have said that they will not enforce the new rules, but have stopped short of filing lawsuits. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, a Republican, has sued the Biden administration yesterday to block the rules, which will in part prohibit schools from barring trans students and teachers from using the school facilities and pronouns that align with their gender identities, among other policies. The first week of testimony at Donald Trump's hush money trial was the scene setter for jurors. Manhattan prosecutors portrayed what they say was an illegal scheme to influence the 2016 presidential campaign by burying negative stories. And now prosecutors are working on filling in the details of how they believe Trump and his allies pulled it off. Court resumes today with Gary Farrow, a banker who helped Trump's former attorney Michael Cohen open accounts, including one that Cohen used to buy the silence of porn performer Stormy Daniels. The legal ramifications of a breach contract have thrust former President Trump into a spotlight once again. Karen McDougal, a former Playboy model, became central to exposing alleged hush money payments after her dissatisfaction with a contractual agreement with the National Enquirer. The publication had promised her a columnist position in exchange for her silence about an alleged affair with Trump, a deal that eventually fell through. NASA's James Webb Telescope has captured the most detailed infrared images ever taken of the Horsehead Nebula, one of the most majestic and recognizable objects in the night sky. The new observations show the top of the horse's mane, revealing for the first time the small-scale structures on the edge of the giant cloud of dust and gas. Located roughly 1,300 light-years away in the constellation of Orion, the Hunter, the iconic silhouette of a horse's head and neck, rises from what look like churning waves of interstellar foam. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, a contender for Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate, has ignited controversy with revelations from her forthcoming memoir. In her book, she details the decision to euthanize an untrainable dog, causing uproar among animal lovers and political commentators alike. And this incident has brought her under severe scrutiny, blending personal actions with public political consequences. U.S. Representative Victoria Spartz, the first and only Ukrainian-born member of Congress, emerged early on as a natural advocate for supporting her native country in its war with Russia. But when $61 billion in additional support for the war effort came up for a vote in the House recently, she voted against it. Instead, she has called for better oversight of U.S. funds and opposed giving blank checks to the Ukrainian cause. She says U.S. border security should be a bigger priority. Basketball star Brittany Griner this week will speak publicly about her experience in a Russian prison for the first time since her release in December of 2022. And 4 days after the U.S. voted to sign off a long-awaited $61 billion in aid, Ukraine did the one thing that the White House has reportedly been asking it not to do so. It struck another oil facility on Russian soil. Ukraine said that the drone attack took out about 900,000 cubic feet of Russian fuel, followed by 10 drones slamming into an oil refinery, shutting the plant down. Russian army has destroyed Ukraine's famous Harry Potter castle in a deadly strike this morning. At least 5 people killed and 23 others were injured in that strike, and the castle is the residence of former MP Sergei Kivalov, who was among the wounded. The United States implored all countries supplying weapons to Sudan's warring parties to halt arms sales, warning that history in the vast western Darfur region, where there was a genocide 20 years ago, is repeating itself. U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield told reporters after an emergency closed meeting of the UN Security Council that El Fasher, the only capital in Darfur not held by paramilitary forces, is on the precipice of a large-scale massacre. A gunman stormed a mosque in western Afghanistan and killed 6 people, with local residents claiming the Shia community had been targeted. Locals said the mosque served the minority Shia community in a district just south of the provincial capital of Herat city, and the imam and a 3-year-old child were among those who were killed. With no group claiming the attack, the regional chapter of the Islamic State group is the largest security threat in Afghanistan and has frequently targeted Shia communities. The Taliban faced criticism over their human rights record at a UN meeting yesterday, with Washington accusing them of systematically depriving women and girls of their human rights. However, in an awkward first for the UN Human Rights Council, the concerned country's current rulers were not present because they are not recognized by the global body. Afghanistan was represented by an ambassador appointed by the previous US-backed government, which the Taliban ousted in 2021. Mexico took Ecuador to the top UN court, accusing the nation of violating international law by storming the Mexican embassy in Quito to arrest a former vice president who had just been granted asylum by Mexico. Those raids after Mexico granted asylum to former Vice President Jorge Glass spiked tensions that had been brewing between the two countries. An army helicopter carrying supplies to troops crashed in a rural area in northern Colombia, killing 9 soldiers on board. The Colombian military said the helicopter was taking the supplies to the municipality of Santa Rosa del Sur, an area that has recently experienced fighting between the National Liberation Army guerrilla group and the drug trafficking group known as the Gulf Clan. Scottish First Minister Hamza Yusuf has resigned barely a year into the role after the collapse of his coalition government, a humbling and chaotic departure that throws Scotland's ruling pro-independence party into chaos. And the Czech Republic has signaled its support for new rounds of European Union enlargement as the country prepares to mark 20 years since its own accession to the bloc. Enlargement is a geostrategic necessity, said the Czech president at a press conference this morning in Prague, together with German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier. Chinese President Xi Jinping is heading to the European Union for the first time in 5 years with a clear message. Beijing offers much more of an economic opportunity for the bloc than the U.S. wants to admit. The Chinese leader will begin this 5-day trip to France, Serbia and Hungary on the 5th of May. And those nations are seeking investment from China despite a litany of European Union probes into Beijing's industrial policy and the warnings from officials in Washington about the risks. President Macron aims to deepen his personal connection with President Xi during the 2-day visit to France as he appeals to the Chinese leader to urge Vladimir Putin to end Russia's war in Ukraine. And China will send a robotic spacecraft in the coming days on a round trip to the moon's far side in the first of 3 technically demanding missions that will pave the way for an inaugural Chinese crewed landing at a base on the lunar South Pole. China's Coast Guard fired water cannons that damaged a Philippine vessel this morning, marking the latest flare-up of violence between the 2 countries in the disputed South China Sea. Indonesia's Mount Ruang volcano has erupted today for a second time in 2 weeks, spewing ash almost 2 kilometers into the sky, closing an airport and peppering nearby villages with debris. The alert level of the volcano on Sulawesi Island was again raised to the highest level by the Indonesian Geological Service after sensors picked up increasing volcanic activity, and the agency urged residents and climbers to stay at least 6 kilometers from the volcano's crater. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. Captain Kane Williamson will play at his 6th 2020 World Cup in June after New Zealand named an experienced 15-man squad this morning. And wicketkeeper batter Sanju Samson and spinner Yuzvendra Chahal were today named in India's provisional squad for the T20 World Cup in the Americas, but star batter Shubman Gill and the big hitting Rinku Singh found themselves relegated to the reserves group. The BCCI announced that the Rohit Sharma-led squad after a meeting between Secretary Jay Shah and Chief Selector Ajit Agarkar in Ahmedabad. All-rounder Hardik Pandya retained as vice-captain despite his poor recent form after taking over the Mumbai Indians' leadership in the ongoing IPL. Bangladesh, who will be eager to make a comeback early in the 5-match series after losing the opening match, won the toss and opted to bat first in Sylhet today. India women displayed clinical performance in the first T20I of the series, securing a comfortable victory. Bangladesh women stumbled during their chase, lacking intent from their top-order batters and missing significant contributions. Meanwhile, a Bangladeshi court has ordered a nationwide shutdown of schools today due to an ongoing heat wave, a day after the government sent millions of children back to class despite searing temperatures. The European Union's recent decision to issue multiple entry Schengen visas valid up to 5 years to Indians has come as a relief not only to Desi Globetrotters but also to consulate staff. In one of the first reactions to this move by a major European country, it was the deputy head of commission at the German embassy who said it is a win-win for both the applicants who get long-term visas as well as the embassy. United States envoy to India Eric Garcetti has addressed the challenges posed by visa backlogs and emphasized the significant strides made in reducing waiting times for Indian visa applications. He expressed pride in the efforts undertaken over the past year, resulting in a 3/4 reduction in visa wait times across various categories, with no wait time except for first-time tourist visas, which have seen a 75% decrease. The Supreme Court of India will continue hearing Arvind Kejriwal Kejriwal's plea against the Enforcement Directorate arrest today after taking statements yesterday and asking why he ignored the ED summons. In an update about the Aam Aadmi Party MP Raghav Chadda amid Kejriwal's arrest and election campaigning season, Saurabh Bhardwaj said that he's in the UK. There was a complication in his eyes and it was critical that he might have lost his eyesight as well. Meanwhile, Arvind Kejriwal's wife Sunita was given permission to meet him in the Tihar jail. In another blow to Congress in Madhya Pradesh, veteran MLA Ramnivas Rawat from Vijaypur has joined the BJP this morning. And the All India Congress Committee announced that Devendra Yadav has been appointed to serve as the interim president of the Delhi Pradesh Congress Committee after Arvinder Singh Lovely stepped down from his position as the head of the Delhi Congress. Natya Vriksha marked World Dance Day today, curated by dancer Geeta Chandran at the India International Centre in New Delhi. She, along with her organization Natya Vriksha, celebrated the annual dance event showcasing various dance styles, workshops, seminars and discussions to celebrate Indian classical dance. In Bengaluru's sweltering heat, the weatherman is suggesting people should go back to the good old black umbrella and make it their summer accessory instead of the colorful parasols. While Jason Gillespie would like to rely on communication and clarity to get the best out of the Pakistan test team, Gary Kirsten would need an environment conducive for continuity and consistency for the national side to thrive in the shorter formats. Both were appointed as the national side's head coaches for the test and the white ball formats respectively, set to enter the world of Pakistan cricket, which has been marred by more than a year of turmoil, with high standards and principles that define their respective coaching philosophies. As farmers from across the province thronged the mall to record their protest against what they believe to be an unfair wheat procurement policy, a heavy contingent of Punjab police in anti-riot gear rounded up scores of their numbers in Lahore. The farmers had taken to the streets against an inordinate delay in the purchase of grain and the decision to reduce the provincial procurement quota from over 4 million tons to 2.3 million tons. The farmers claim hundreds detained across Punjab and 46 people are right now in custody. Kisan Ittihad leader announcing plans to block the highways across provinces, and the PTI is lending its support. Punjab likely to unveil the wheat policy in the assembly today. Clearing the air after months of confusion and speculation, the PTI finally designated Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's Chief Minister Ali Amin Gandapur and parliamentary opposition leaders Umar Ayub and Shibli Faraz to hold talks with the military establishment. Their names were confirmed by PTI founding chairman and former Prime Minister Imran Khan while speaking to media people inside Adiala jail following the hearing of a £190 million corruption case. Justice Athar Minala has said that the state had to protect the country's judges and the independence of the judiciary. He made the remarks as the six-member Supreme Court bench resumed hearing a case pertaining to allegations made by 6 Islamabad High Court judges regarding interference by the country's security apparatus in judicial matters. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you. I do have the financial news coming up in just a minute. Stay with us right here. We'll have you completely informed on this last day of April. Let's get you all the financial news that you need to know today. It is the end of the month, the last day of April, and let's look at our foreign currency exchange rates. We have the Indian rupee at 83.45, Pakistani rupee 278.32, Bangladeshi taka at 109.82, Sri Lankan rupee 296.70, Nepalese rupee 133.58, the British pound at 0.80, the euro at 0.93, Canadian dollar 1.37, Australian dollar 1.54, Mexican peso 17.06, the Chinese yuan at 7.24, Japanese yen 157.30, Russian ruble 92.57, the Thai baht at 37.14, and the Turkish lira at 32.38. U.S. stocks hit pause today as investors marked time ahead of the Federal Reserve's rate decision, with earnings from Amazon on deck to test prospects for a further big tech-fueled rally. Futures on the S&P 500 and the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 slipped roughly 0.1% after closing with small gains, and Dow Jones Industrial Average futures wavered below the flat line. The U.S. Treasury ramped up its estimate for federal borrowing for the current quarter to $243 billion, more than most dealers had anticipated, in a move that largely reflected weaker cash receipts than officials had expected. Tesla added nearly $64 billion to its valuation after the EV giant took a step closer to launching self-driving cars in China. The world's largest electric vehicle maker jumped 12% as trading began on Wall Street after it reached a data-sharing agreement with Chinese tech giant Baidu. And that tie-up, revealed during Elon Musk's surprise visit to Beijing, will allow Tesla to use Baidu's mapping and navigating systems on Chinese roads. Elon Musk's net worth is soaring after it plunged to the lowest level in almost a year. In the past 5 days, the world's third richest person has gained $37.3 billion in net worth, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, and that's his largest weekly gain since March of last year, just before he agreed to buy Twitter. That was March of 2022, actually, just before he agreed to buy Twitter Inc. for $44 billion in one of the biggest leveraged buyout deals in history. The billionaire's surprise trip to Beijing on Sunday for meetings with officials, including Premier Li Qiang, paid immediate dividends. Tesla secured tentative approval to deploy its more advanced driver assistant features in China, potentially boosting revenue in its second most important market. Tesla CEO has fired 2 senior executives and intends to cut hundreds more jobs due to his dissatisfaction with declining sales and the speed of workforce reductions. The report by The Information that cites an email from Elon Musk to senior managers, and the report states that Rebecca Tinucci, head of Tesla's supercharger division, and Daniel Ho, leader of the new vehicles program, will depart this morning. He also plans to terminate the entire teams working under these two, including approximately 500 employees in the supercharger group. Ford's electric vehicle unit is reporting huge losses amid low consumer demand, and now federal regulators have launched an investigation into the automaker's hands-free driving technology following 2 deadly crashes. The company says losses soared in the first quarter to $1.3 billion, or $132,000 for each of the 10,000 vehicles it sold in the first 3 months of the year, helping to drag down overall company earnings. The EV unit, which Ford calls Model E, sold 10,000 vehicles in the quarter, down 20% from the number it sold a year earlier. Sierra Nevada Corporation has been awarded a monumental $13 billion contract to develop and produce the new Survivable Airborne Operations Center, which will replace the U.S. Air Force's aging fleet of E-4B Nightwatch aircrafts, colloquially known as Doomsday planes. And this announcement was made by the Department of the Air Force, highlighting the significant step towards modernizing the nation's nuclear command and control capabilities. The second of 2 nuclear reactors in Georgia has entered commercial operation, capping a project that cost billions more and took years longer than originally projected. Georgia Power Company and fellow owners announced the milestone yesterday for Plant Vottle's Unit 4, which joins an earlier new reactor southeast of Augusta in splitting atoms to make carbon-free electricity. A month after the U.S. offered $1.5 billion to restart one shuttered nuclear power plant, there's this growing sense among officials in the industry and government that it may not be the last. And there are a couple of nuclear power plants that probably should and can turn back on. This according to Jigar Shah, the director of the U.S. Energy Department's Loan Programs Office, and his office had approved a loan to Holtec International Corporation to reopen the Palisades nuclear plant in Michigan. McDonald's customers may be thinking twice before grabbing a Big Mac and fries. The chain posted first quarter results that missed revenue growth and same-store sales estimates across its segments, while its earnings also came below expectations. Eli Lilly raised its annual revenue forecast by $2 billion this morning due to strong demand and plans to increase production of its weight loss treatments Zepbound and related diabetes drug Mounjaro, lifting its shares about 7% pre-market. Coca-Cola raised its annual organic sales forecast today after beating first quarter revenue and profit expectations as customers shell out more money for its pricey sodas and juices globally. GE Healthcare Technologies missed first quarter revenue estimates today, hurt by lower sales in China market and weaker than expected demand for its scanning devices, sending its shares tumbling as much as 12% before the bell today. PayPal raised its full-year adjusted profit forecast today as the payments giant benefited from robust consumer spending, while measures to cut costs improved operating margins in the first quarter. Molson Coors surpassed Wall Street estimates for first quarter sales and profit today, helped by higher prices as well as steady demand for the beer makers' brands such as Coors Light and Miller Lite. The company also reaffirmed its full-year sales and profit forecasts. Bob Bakish is stepping down as Paramount Global CEO, a move that comes as the company negotiates a major deal with film and TV studio Skydance Media. Paramount Global announced CEO Bob Bakish is stepping down as investors continue to eye the company's deal-making options. The July 20th bout between YouTuber turned prize fighter Jake Paul and former heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson will be classified as a sanctioned professional fight by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations, and the heavyweight showdown will be contested over 8 two-minute rounds, with each fighter using 14-ounce gloves, and the outcome will affect their professional boxing records. Walmart is looking to increase upward mobility for its employees, removing the requirement of a college degree to apply for higher salaried management positions. The move opens up a path for good employees to make their way to six-figure salaries, even if they can't afford the expense of going to college. It may pay dividends to keep your resume up to date into your older years, as a new survey has found that 1 in 8 retirees are swapping the couch for work once again. The U.S. Department of Agriculture started testing beef for the presence of avian influenza in states where the virus was detected in dairy cows. Samples of ground beef are being collected at retail outlets after the H5N1 flu virus has been identified in 9 U.S. states since the first case was found last month. And the United States Department of Agriculture's Food Safety and Inspection Service shared that more than 8,000 boxes of frozen meat pizza sold at Walmart were being recalled because of a misbranding issue. They announced that the misbranding fails to properly identify potential allergens that could prove fatal. The pizzas affected by the recall were made by the meat processing plant 82VT Frozen in Newport and contains soy, a known allergen. No food product is immune from a recall, not even ready-to-eat deli meats. Concept North America Incorporated, a New Jersey-based firm, is recalling close to 100,000 pounds of sliced Stockmeyer prosciutto produced in Germany for not being inspected properly. Retailers across the country, including stores in California, Connecticut, Florida, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia, and Washington, sold that recalled product. H-E-B has issued a voluntary recall for some of their ice cream products as they might contain potential metal. In a statement, the store says the affected products were distributed to all H-E-B stores in Texas, Mexico, Central Market, Jovi, Smart Shop, and Mi Tienda stores. No injuries have been reported related to that recall, but all products related to the recall have been removed from the stores. And these, ladies and gentlemen, are H-E-B Creamy Creations ice cream, the 3-ounce chocolate, the 3-ounce lime orange sherbet combo, and the 3-ounce homemade vanilla chocolate combo. In an innovative approach to community development and social entrepreneurship, the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas is again hosting The Pitch, and that'll be happening this Thursday. Likened to a heart-driven version of the television hit Shark Tank, the 8th annual engaging event will see 5 local non-profit startups competing for a substantial sum of funding to empower their world-changing initiatives. The $275,000 prize money is up for grabs, and the competition is a high-stakes affair, attracting not only local innovators but also an enthusiastic public audience. Let me give you those 5 finalists. Roy Scott from Healthy Hip Hop, Priscilla Moore from Delighted to Dola, Courtney Hamilton from Tech Savvy DFW, Cecil Smith, Abide Women's Health Services, and Robin Head, Entryway DFW. A federal judge in Fort Worth has sentenced a financial advisor to 5 years in prison for a scheme that netted her more than $3 million in 3 years. Dusty Sternadell is 43 years old, faces jail time after a jury convicted her of stealing money from clients, and the scheme was built around money transfers that confused her clients. The Pentagon has said that the temporary pier being constructed by the U.S. military to boost aid deliveries to Gaza will cost Washington at least $320 million. And Canadian singer, known by stage name The Weeknd, has donated $2 million through his charity EXO Humanitarian Fund in an effort to provide 18 million loaves of bread to help the starving families in Gaza, according to the UN's World Food Programme. OpenAI, maker of the viral AI chatbot ChatGPT, has netted another news licensing deal in Europe, adding London's Financial Times to a growing list of publishers it's paying for content access. And the Cannes Film Festival has named the 8 members of its main competition jury who will join previously announced President Greta Gerwig in deciding the Palme d'Or and other key prizes at the 77th edition, running from the 14th to the 25th of this coming month of May that starts tomorrow. The group of 7 leading Western industrialized nations are supporting an ambitious UN agreement to reduce plastics. And European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen did not rule out a TikTok ban for the 27-nation bloc nearly a week after President Biden signed legislation that could see the social platform being restricted in the U.S. unless the app cuts ties with its Chinese parent company. China has built a $170 billion stockpile of gold after a record buying spree in a move that has raised fears Beijing is preparing its economy for a possible conflict over Taiwan. The People's Bank of China bought 27 tons of gold in the first 3 months of the year, taking its reserves to a record high of 2,262 tons. This according to data from the World Gold Council. Huawei Technologies' net profit has leapt 564% to 19.65 billion yuan, which is $2.71 billion in the first quarter. The International Monetary Fund boosted its growth forecast for Asia this year, reflecting a rosy outlook for the region's 2 largest economies and flagging a possible upward revision in its outlook for China. Asia is set to expand 4.5% this year from the prior year, 0.3 percentage points higher than the October regional outlook, but a slowdown from last year's 5% pace, according to the International Monetary Fund. America's 47.6 million workers who are immigrants or the U.S.-born children of immigrants play a vital role in meeting U.S. workforce needs, with large numbers well positioned to meet future demand. Immigrant origin workers accounting for 29% of the overall U.S. workforce in 2023, up from 19% in the year 2000. India's share in global services exports has more than doubled over the last 18 years, and rise of global capability centers has played a crucial role in that expansion. And India's net oil import bill is projected to increase to $101 to $104 billion in the current fiscal year, from $96.1 billion in 23-24. BSE Sensex and the Nifty 50, the Indian equity benchmark indices, resumed their rally today after a strong show yesterday. BSE Sensex moved up over 380 points to cross the 75,000 mark, and the Nifty 50 was above 22,750. Across the board, buying lifted the Sensex by 941 points yesterday. Gold prices have dropped on the multi-commodity exchange as the U.S. Federal Reserve is set to decide on an interest rate cut later this week. June gold futures on the MCX have fallen by 257 rupees or 0.36% to 71,345 per 10 grams in India. The surge in SUVs has made Mahindra & Mahindra one of the biggest gainers in the Indian automotive industry. The company, which till a few years back was struggling to get its act together with previous gen Scorpio as its only flagship, has staged a turnaround and emerged as the revenue leader in the SUV category ahead of some of its formidable rivals such as Toyota, Hyundai, Tata Motors, Kia and Maruti Suzuki. The Director General of Civil Aviation has removed Vistara's VP pilot training, Captain Vikram Mohan Dayal, over alleged lapses in conversion training of pilots. And the Cellular Operators Association of India has urged the Indian government to impose a ban on the sale of Wi-Fi 6E routers, which utilize the 6 GHz spectrum band for data transmission. Patanjali Ayurveda is an Indian multinational conglomerate which produces hundreds of Ayurvedic food items and pharmacy products. As per the latest report in an affidavit filed in the Supreme Court, Uttarakhand Licensing Authority has said it has suspended licenses of 14 products manufactured by Patanjali's Divya Pharmacy. And it's 40 degrees outside. The sun decided to be in its glory, and you don't feel like eating anything in these heat waves. Of course, the only thing that is enticing to people in India is the luscious mangoes. With the mango season in full swing across India, it's the perfect time to dive into the refreshing taste of this beloved fruit. And if you are heading out for a brunch, lunch, or dinner, then the city has multiple options there in Mumbai as they prep for the mango season. Mango sushi to pizzas, all available. Having met success in the first project, Raintree Foundation is planning to undertake a river rejuvenation project spanning 2,098 square kilometers in Ratnagiri district of Maharashtra. And Uber has said this morning it had made the decision to cease operating its ride-hailing app in Pakistan. The subsidiary brand Careem will continue to operate, with the Careem app offering ride-hailing services across Pakistan and earning opportunities for drivers. Uber had acquired its rival Careem for $3.1 billion. The executive board of the International Monetary Fund approved the immediate disbursement of approximately $1.1 billion to Pakistan. The board met in Washington yesterday and completed the second review under the standby arrangement for Pakistan, allowing for bringing total disbursements under the arrangement to about $3 billion. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif today said that the release of this final $1.1 billion tranche by the International Monetary Fund under the standby arrangement would bring more economic stability. The federal government in Islamabad has announced stringent financial rules for all government entities, including ministries, divisions, departments and agencies, to tighten control over cash through sweeping arrangements, allowing the Finance Ministry to take over idle public funds in bank accounts. And the Karachi-based K Electric has sought approval to charge up to 18 rupees 6 paise per unit additional fuel costs from power consumers at an average monthly burden of about 2 rupees per unit to mop up about 28 billion rupees additional funds and clear a backlog of about 9 months. The petrol and high-speed diesel prices are set to drop by 5 rupees and 9 rupees per litre, respectively, today, mainly because of a fall in the international prices and import premiums. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you. We have the final segment of our program coming up for you on this last day of April. It is another humid morning across North Texas with when we have our temperatures. They started in the 60s, but now with low clouds invading from the south, it'll be another nice day with highs in the mid-80s. South winds have returned. And later this afternoon, the dry line in West Texas will edge to the east, but won't make it to Dallas-Fort Worth. There'll be some isolated severe storms forming. These will be traveling southeast through the late evening hours, but they will most likely die out before they reach our area, but we'll be watching just in case. More of the same tomorrow with morning clouds, a few sprinkles and peaks of afternoon sun, and highs once again will be in the mid-80s tomorrow also. Community Radio Networks would like to thank our supporters. We have big thanks going out to Discount Power, to Houston EB5, to the Aluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, Maikolachi, Ruchi Palace by Maikolachi, Sri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Eggholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flash Brush Productions. And the Shruti Sangeet Academy has Indian classical vocal lessons available for those who'd like to learn. And these are taught by certified classical vocalist and talk show host Shanta Mishra. You can explore the soul of Indian music. They offer comprehensive curriculums, personalized instructions, and an immersion in bhajan slokas and folk music. Private lessons and group lessons are available on the weekends in East Plano. You can learn classical ragas, master vocal techniques, embrace rhythm and tal, and experience Indian culture like never before. I'm going to give you Shanta Mishra's telephone number to call her. It's 612-562-4432. And we also would like for all of you to know that it is the last day for early voting today. So those of you who would not like to wait for the actual voting day, please do go vote today. And we have DFW Gujarati Samaj presenting a non-stop comedy drama with renowned artist Sri Sanjay Goradia. It's happening on the 5th of May this weekend at 5 o'clock at the McKinney North High School. And there will be light refreshments available for purchase out there. Please go ahead and get your tickets for DFW Gujarati Samaj's non-stop comedy drama with Sri Sanjay Goradia. 5 o'clock on the 5th of May, this Sunday, at the McKinney North High School. And then next week on Thursday, Hassan Sumro, in association with the Sheesh Eatery and Lounge, presents Moms and Momo, celebrating moms in a fun-filled contest hosted by the one and only Hina Dilpazir Khan. You will have winners as in the categories of Most Inspirational Moms, Best Hairstyle, Super Mom, Juggling It All, Best Mother Figure, Funniest Mom Moment, Best Dressed Moms, Most Melodious Mom, and then Most Stylish Mom, also Best Grandmas. All this will be happening at the Sheesh Eatery and Lounge on Thursday, the 9th. And for more information, you can always call Hassan Sumro, who's organizing this event. And let me give you his number. It is 972-333-4801. The Intense Tour with Indian Idol stars is happening on Friday, the 10th of May at the Grand Center in Plano, and on Saturday the 11th, an evening of ghazals and geets by Radhika Chopra at the Plaza Theatre in Garland at 6 o'clock in the evening. And let me give you a number for more details. You can call 408-412-1238. Unforgettable 90s with Kumar Shanu and Sadhana Sargam happening on Sunday, the 12th of May at 6:30 at the Credit Union of Texas Event Center, which is in Allen. And then on the 19th of May, we have the Junoon Show happening at the Raleigh Underground. AI Con 2024, incorporating new tech and AI, happening by the U.S. India of Commerce on the 23rd of May, 9:30 to 2:30 at the Renaissance Hotel, Addison. And the morning keynote speaker is Chakri Gautamakulla, CEO and co-founder of O9 Solutions. And in the afternoon, the keynote speaker is George Baker, Senior founder and chairman of Park Hub. Please go to the Chamber's website to register and get more information, and that's usicoc.org, U.S. India Chamber of Commerce. It is the 20th anniversary of the Taste of the Cowboys, and it is going to be at the Ford Center, the Star in Frisco, on the 7th of June. We have a warm invitation to you as The BAPS Charities brings you In the Joy of Others Walk Run, and that is on Saturday, the 8th of June, starting at 8 o'clock at 3111 Olympus Boulevard. It is the BAPS Charities hosting its annual In the Joy of Others Walk Run to extend support to Irving Cares and MetroCare, two invaluable organizations dedicated to serving the community. There's a 2-day festival of life and wellness called the Holistic Festival happening on the 8th and 9th of June by Mystic Mandala. It is going to be at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center. And for more information, you can call Vijay at 972-750-1419. Badshah's Pagal Tour in Dallas at the Curtis Culwell Center on the 14th of June. And Shreya Ghoshal will be at the Curtis Culwell Center on the 16th of June. Shankar Ehsan Loy live in concert on the 29th of June at the Toyota Music Factory, an unforgettable night with the legendary trio Shankar Ehsan Loy at the Toyota Music Factory. And Nan's Vision is presenting a glamorous night with Shilpa Shetty on the 29th of June. We'll get you more information on all these events as it is made available, as all the information is made available to us. But for right now, that's what your social calendar looks like. It is the last day of April, and let's go through some of the stories that happened from the annals of history. On the 30th of April, way back in 1789, it was George Washington sworn in as the first American president and delivered the first inaugural speech at the Federal Hall in New York City. Elements of the ceremony set tradition. Presidential inaugurations have deviated a little in the 2 centuries since his inauguration. In front of 10,000 spectators, he appeared in a plain brown broadcloth suit holding a ceremonial army sword. And at 6'3", Washington presented an impressive and solemn figure as he took the oath of office, standing on the second balcony of the Federal Hall, with Vice President John Adams standing beside him. He repeated the words prompted by the Chancellor, kissed the Bible, and then went to the Senate chamber to deliver his inaugural address, and after which he walked up Broadway with a group of legislators and political leaders to pray at the St. Paul's Chapel. Later, he made the humble and astute observation that his presidency and the nation itself was an experiment. Happened on today's date in 1789. And then in 1803, on the 30th of April, representatives of the U.S. and Napoleonic France complete negotiations for the Louisiana Purchase, a massive land sale that doubles the size of young American Republic, or what was known as Louisiana Territory, composed most of modern-day U.S. between the Mississippi and the Rocky Mountains, with the exceptions of Texas, parts of New Mexico, and other pockets of land already controlled by the U.S. This formal treaty for the Louisiana Purchase, antedated to the 30th of April, was signed 2 days later. But the U.S. and France complete that purchase on today's date in the year 1803. And in 1859, the first chapter of Charles Dickens' serialized novel called A Tale of Two Cities is published in his circular all the year round. It rolls out over 31 weekly installments, with the last one appearing that November. It was the first installment of A Tale of Two Cities, published on April the 30th in 1859. And on April the 30th in 1897, British physicist J.J. Thomson announced his discovery that atoms were made up of smaller components. This finding revolutionized the way scientists thought about the atom and had major ramifications for the field of physics. And though he referred to them as corpuscles, what he found is more commonly known today as the electron. Mankind had already discovered electric current and harnessed it to great effect, but scientists had not yet observed the makeup of the atoms. A highly respected professor at Cambridge, he determined the existence of electrons by studying cathode rays and concluded that the particles making up the rays were 1,000 times lighter than the lightest atom, proving that something smaller than atoms existed. He likened the composition of atoms to plum pudding, with negatively charged corpuscles dotted throughout a positively charged field. And this plum pudding analogy was disproved later by a student and collaborator of his at his lab at Cambridge. That happened in 1910. It was on today's date in 1897 that he announced the discovery of electrons. And in addition to winning his own Nobel Prize, he employed 6 research assistants who went on to win Nobel Prizes in physics, and 2, including Rutherford, who won Nobel Prizes for chemistry. And his son, George Paget Thomson, also won a Nobel Prize for his study of electrons. Combined with his own research, the network of atomic researchers cultivated and gave humanity a new and detailed understanding of the smallest building blocks of the universe. On the 30th of April in 1917, the so-called Battle of the Boot marks the end of the British Army's Samara offensive, launched the previous month by Anglo-Indian forces under the regional commander-in-chief Sir Frederick Stanley Maude against the important Turkish railroad at Samara, some 130 kilometers north of Baghdad in Mesopotamia, which is the modern-day Iraq. Fresh from the triumphant capture of Baghdad, he had decided not to hesitate before moving to consolidate the Allied positions to the north, where Turkish commander Khalil Pasha's forces had retreated from Baghdad to await reinforcements sent from Persia. And in the Samara offensive, 45,000 Anglo-Indian frontline troops were sent up the Tigris River towards the railway at Samara. And that Battle of the Boot that took place on today's date in 1917 between Anglo-Indian and Turkish forces. On the 30th of April in 1939, the New York World's Fair opens in New York City. The opening ceremony featured speeches by President Franklin Roosevelt and New York Governor Herbert Lehman, ushered in the first day of television broadcasting in New York. Spanning 1,200 acres at the Flushing Meadow Park in Queens, the fairground was marked by 2 imposing structures, the Perisphere and the Trilon, and exhibited such new technology as FM radio, robotics, fluorescent lighting, and a crude fax machine. And that happened on today's date, the 30th of April in 1939, the New York World Fair opened, and 63 nations participated, which enjoyed large crowds before the outbreak of World War II interrupted many of its scheduled events. On this last day of April in the year 1945, holed up in a bunker under his headquarters in Berlin, Adolf Hitler commits suicide by swallowing a cyanide capsule and shooting himself in the head. Soon after, Germany unconditionally surrendered to the Allied forces, ending Hitler's dreams of a 1,000-year Reich. It was his suicide that happened in his underground bunker, and that was on today's date in 1945. The Land Rover, a British-made all-terrain vehicle that will earn a reputation for its use in exotic locales, debuts at an auto show in Amsterdam on the 30th of April in 1948. The first Land Rover, known as the Series 1, was the brainchild of Maurice Wilks, the head designer of the British car company Rover, of which his brother Spencer Wilks was the managing director. Used an old American-made Jeep, the Willys Overland Jeep, to do work at his farm in England. However, the Jeep was plagued by mechanical problems, and he decided to design a more reliable vehicle. It was the original Land Rover that debuted at an auto show on the 30th of April in 1948. And the Range Rover, which is a more comfortable luxury version of the Land Rover, in 1970 is when it was launched. And the Discovery, a less expensive version of the Range Rover, made its public debut in 1989, marketed by a younger, less conservative audience than Range Rover buyers. By the time the company had experienced ownership changes, in 1967, Rover became part of Leyland Motors, later called British Leyland. British Aerospace later acquired Land Rover, and in 1994, BMW acquired the Land Rover business. Next, in 2000, the Ford Motor Company purchased Land Rover for $2.7 billion. And in 2008, Ford, which was experiencing a sales slump due to the worldwide economic crisis, sold Land Rover, along with another British-based brand, Jaguar, to Tata Motors of India for some $2.3 billion. But it all started with the original Land Rover that debuted at this auto show on the 30th of April, today's date, in 1948. The South Vietnamese stronghold of Saigon, now known as Ho Chi Minh City, falls to the People's Army of Vietnam and the Viet Cong on the 30th of April in 1975. The South Vietnamese forces had collapsed under the rapid advancement of the North Vietnamese, and the most recent fighting had begun when the North Vietnamese launched a major attack against the lightly defended province there located due north of Saigon along the Cambodian border, overrunning the provincial capital. It was the fall of Saigon when the South Vietnam surrendered on today's date in the year 1975. And in 1993, on the 30th of April, 4 years after publishing a proposal for an idea of linked information systems, computer scientist Tim Berners-Lee releases the source code for the world's first web browser and editor. Originally, it was called Mesh. The browser that he dubbed World Wide Web becomes the first royalty-free, easy-to-use means of browsing the emerging information network that developed into the Internet as we know it today. Berners-Lee was a fellow at CERN, the research organization headquartered in Switzerland. Other research institutions like MIT and Stanford had developed complex systems for internally sharing information, and he sought a means of connecting CERN systems to others, outlined a plan for such a network, and developed it over a few years. The computer he used, a Next desktop, became the world's first internet server. Berners-Lee wrote and published the first web page, a simplistic outline of the World Wide Web WWW project in 1991. He launched it as a public domain on today's date in 1993. Simple web browsers like the Mosaic appeared a short time later, and before long the web had become by far the most popular system of its kind. Within a matter of years, his invention had revolutionized information sharing, and in doing so had dramatically altered the way that human beings communicated. The creation and globalization of the web is widely considered one of the most transformational events in human history. 4.39 billion people, including you, are now estimated to use the internet, accounting for over half the global population. The average American now spends 24 hours a week online. The internet's rise has been the greatest expansion in information access in human history and has led to the exponential growth in the total amount of data in the world, and has facilitated a spread of knowledge, ideas, and social movements that was unthinkable as recently as the 1990s. It was the World Wide Web, WWW, that was launched in the public domain on today's date, the 30th of April in 1993. Top women's tennis player Monica Seles is stabbed by a deranged German man during a match in Hamburg. The assailant, a fan of German tennis star Steffi Graf, apparently hoped that by injuring her, his idol Graf would be able to regain her #1 ranking. She became the youngest woman to win the French Open in 1990 when she defeated #1 ranked Steffi Graf in the finals. And a power player with a habit of grunting loudly during matches, she replaced Steffi Graf as the top-ranked women's player. At the time of the 1993 attack, she had won 8 Grand Slam titles and was ranked #1 in the world. And on today's date, in 1993, she was 19 years old, sitting on a courtside seat during a changeover in her match against Magdalena Malieva at the Hamburg Open, when a 38-year-old Gunter Pasch leaned over a fence and stabbed her between the shoulder blades with a knife. He was quickly apprehended by security officials, and she was taken to the hospital, recovered from her physical injuries, but was left with deep emotional scars and didn't play again professionally for 2 years. He was described as a mentally unbalanced loner, contended he was only trying to hurt her, not kill her. A German court convicted him of grievous bodily harm, and he received a 2-year suspended sentence. She, along with many others, was angered by this lenient verdict, and prosecutors eventually won the right to a retrial. However, the judge at the second trial upheld the suspended sentence. In August of 1995, she had become a U.S. citizen a year earlier, and she made her tennis comeback by winning the Canadian Open. The next month, she lost the U.S. Open finals to Steffi Graf, and in January of 1996, she won her 4th Australian Open and final Grand Slam title. In 2003, a foot injury forced her out of competition, and she played only sporadically and officially retired in 2008. On the 30th of April in 1997, at exactly 12:11 p.m., London's iconic Big Ben clock stops ticking. For 43 minutes, the most famous clock in the world, which strikes the note of every hour, failed to keep time. Engineers traced the problem to the mechanism that controls the hands on the 4 clock faces. Big Ben has some history of technical issues, and the first bell cast for the tower cracked before it could be installed, and the second bell developed a crack shortly after installation. The bell stopped ringing again during the latter 2 years of World War I, and the tower was not illuminated at night for the duration of World War II, when most of London was kept dark to make German bombing raids more difficult. Despite the heavy damage that the Blitz inflicted on London, however, the clock stayed within a second and a half of GMT for the duration of the war. Big Ben, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most iconic and misidentified landmarks in the world. The name initially referred not to the distinctive 320-foot-high clock tower on the north side of the British Houses of Parliament, renamed the Elizabeth Tower in honor of Queen Elizabeth. Since then, extreme weather has caused Big Ben's clock to stop ticking. In 1962, snow delayed the bells, causing the capital of Britain to ring in the new year 10 minutes later than the rest of the country. And the April 1997 story that we are talking about that happened on today's date, that stoppage occurred the day before that year's general election, but the malfunction was probably not a factor in the voting, which Tony Blair's New Labour won in a landslide over incumbent Prime Minister John Major. Big Ben's clock stopped again in 2005 on one of the hottest May days ever recorded in London. Big Ben, which is operated by the Palace of Westminster, underwent its longest period of silence beginning in 2017, and after an extensive $97 million restorations, its bells resumed tolling in 2022. But it was on today's date in 1997 at exactly 12:11 p.m. that Big Ben stopped ticking for 43 minutes. And on the 30th of April in 1997, also in a widely publicized episode of the ABC sitcom Ellen, TV character Ellen Morgan, played by Ellen DeGeneres, announces that she is gay. A former stand-up comedian became part of the ensemble cast of the ABC series These Friends of Mine in 1994. She soon emerged as the undisputed star of the show, which landed in the top 20 best-rated programs for the 94-95 season. It would return in 95 after being renamed Ellen. With her sitcom success, she seemed to be following in the footsteps of stand-up comics such as Tim Allen and Jerry Seinfeld. Like them, she soon published a best-selling memoir called My Point, and I Do Have One. In the fall of 1996, word leaked out that the character of Ellen Morgan, a bookstore manager, might acknowledge that she was a lesbian, making Ellen the first primetime sitcom to feature a gay leading character. And over the next 6 months, ABC relentlessly encouraged the hype, with Ellen DeGeneres herself fueling the fire by joking in television interviews that her character was Lebanese and resisting attempts to clarify her own sexuality. A week before the episode aired, DeGeneres made a well-publicized coming out of her own, appearing on the cover of Time magazine under the headline, "Yep, I'm gay." An interview with Diane Sawyer on ABC's 2020 ran during the all-important Sweeps Week for the network. An estimated 42 million viewers watched the 30th of April special hour-long Puppy episode, which featured cameo appearances by Laura Dern as the woman Ellen falls for, Oprah Winfrey as the therapist to whom she makes her revelation, Katie Lang, Demi Moore, Billy Bob Thornton, and Dwight Yoakam. Later episodes of Ellen failed to hold the audiences, however, and by the end of 1997 season, the show was cancelled due to low ratings. DeGeneres went on to star in the short-lived CBS sitcom The Ellen Show and provided the voice for a lead character in the acclaimed 2003 animated blockbuster Finding Nemo. In September 2003, 1993, she launched a syndicated talk show, The Ellen DeGeneres Show, which ran for 19 seasons. She has also served as a host for both the Emmy Awards and the Academy Awards. But it was a controversial coming out episode of Ellen that aired on today's date in 1997. And on today's date in 2019, Japan's 85-year-old Emperor Akihito steps down from the throne, becoming the first Japanese monarch to abdicate in over 200 years. He was the eldest son of Emperor Hirohito, who had ruled Japan since 1926, was born 2 years after the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, the precursor to Imperial Japan's involvement in World War II. And after the war, as part of a sweeping set of reforms, the country adopted a new Western-style constitution, and the monarchy became purely symbolic. Nevertheless, Akihito ascended to the throne after his father's death in 1989. And while he had no political power, he became an immensely popular figure in Japan. Unlike his father, who rarely appeared before the public, he worked to move the imperial family closer to the people. He and his wife, Empress Michiko, made official visits to 18 countries and to all 47 Japanese prefectures. He offered comfort from earthquakes, tsunamis, and other tragedies, such as the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster in 2011. A staunch pacifist, he repeatedly expressed remorse for Japan's actions during World War II. Citing poor health, the emperor announced his desire to step down in 2016. No emperor had abdicated since 1817. He was succeeded by his eldest son, Crown Prince Naruhito, on the 30th of April in 2019, and a new Japanese imperial era, the Reiwa, was officially established. These, ladies and gentlemen, were some stories from the annals of history that happened on this last date of April, and I do hope you enjoyed them. We are going to end off our show here for today, and we will be welcoming the month of May tomorrow. But for those of you who'd like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754.